Thank you. Yes, being the Nana is the most amazing thing. So I know all of your moms out there are thrilled with their little grandchildren, and I am happy to have joined that. So I'm going to start off with just a little story about what happened in one of our parenting classes. It was just our last one. It was our summer session. And we were probably in the fourth week of 14 weeks of parenting. And one of the moms made a comment about gentle parenting, right? Of course. That's like the hot topic today in parenting. So another mom hysterically just shot her hand up real quick, but at the same time she's hitting her little icon, because we're on Zoom, and it shoots her up to the top right of the corner with, the little hand raised, and she's just, you can see her just vibrating. She wants to talk. And so we called on her, and she begins to tell her story. She said, when I first heard about gentle parenting, I was so excited because I knew that this was going to be the answer to all of my parenting problems. And she said, I literally studied it and I practiced it for like 3 years. And she said, always getting to the end of every day and wondering, where are the results that are promised in gentle parenting? And why am I always dealing with so much guilt at the end of this? After 3 sincerely intentional years of working on gentle parenting, she said, my home and my parent-child relationship and my husband-wife relationship is in absolute chaos and turmoil. And she said, nobody in my family is happy. And she said, now with only 4 weeks of biblical parenting under my belt, she said, we have seen such a transition in our home. She said, we are seeing more clarity, more peace, and it's leaving us with such thanksgiving to God. And she said, I know we still have a long road ahead of us. She did. She was only 4 weeks into a 14-week class. And that's just the beginning of parenting, right? You have the rest of those years. So she said, we are watching our family on a daily basis begin to function better in unity and love. And we are so encouraged. I watched the heads of the moms and dads in our class start to nod up and down. There was this consensus, and at the root of the consensus was guilt was the overwhelming experience, the overwhelming emotion that was happening, and chaos was the overwhelming experience in the home. Now, I'll say there's a lot in gentle parenting that is being taught that is good. It sounds great, too. I mean, right? Even the name, gentle parenting. And I think that's why it has caught on so quickly. We've adopted it so quickly. Because imagine, standing in the park with another friend and the friend saying, I do gentle parenting, and you say, oh, I don't, right? It almost imposes that parenting style on you. We all, as parents, we want to be nice parents. We want to be gentle parents. That's our desire. We want to nurture our children. And we want so much for our children to know how much we love them, right? And that they would freely love us back. I mean, what mom doesn't want to eliminate blame, shame, and guilt from their parenting? And it's promised. That's promised in gentle parenting. What mom doesn't want to avoid trauma in their child's life, right? And yet today, we are witnessing far more blame on the moms and so much trauma in these kids. I have never, in my 30 years of parenting, never seen so much just like frazzled and out of control children. So all this while mom is sitting there doing her very best to be obedient to the rules of gentle parenting, breathing calmly, sweetly, looking at her children, telling them she understands how they feel while they are completely out of control. And this leaves us asking the question, how gentle is too gentle? And how can we curb the chaos and cut the guilt that the moms are experiencing at record high? To answer that question, we need to take a look at the bigger picture. God's perspective is paramount in this topic. Why? Because he is alone the creator of mankind. He is the giver of the ability to be gentle. He is the originator of gentleness. God alone perfectly understands the heart and the behaviors of man, and he certainly understands the mind and the psyche. Listen, when a computer's hardware crashes, right? You don't try to fix that yourself, do you? You don't even take it to maybe your husband, who might have a little more experience with the computer than you do. You start to look for the one person who knows how to actually create the circuit board. Because God loves perfectly, he is the ultimate gentle father. And it is his job, just like you, to have children who choose to love him. Therefore, God ended up granting us free will. God knew that because of that free will, we would choose to do things our way, and that is not a surprise to him. It was all a part of his plan. So because of our self-will, we make judgments and decisions that please us, and they purpose to bring us satisfaction and convenience. We are driven to seek our own comfort and our own pleasure, which leads us into very self-centered lives. It's just who we are, right? Anytime we place our value above the Creator's value, we are actually waging a little rebellion towards God, actually a big rebellion towards God. All sin separates us from the Creator, right? The only one who can fix the circuit board. So we go looking for someone like us to fix our problems, someone who is flawed and who also practices sin. And we want them to solve all our problems. These are people we don't really even know and whose methods are far from being proven. They write books based on their knowledge of, yes, sometimes studies that have been proven, which gains our confidence in them, but most often they are presenting their own flawed theories that are yet unproven. In about 20 to 30 years, it will be your children who they will be studying to find out whether their theories worked or not. The result, we have generations led into systems that are in conflict with God's perfect ways and his perfect standards. So in order, losing my spot, let's take a look back today at how we got here. A man once said that a generation which ignores history has no past and no future. So to secure a better future for us, let's, number one on our outline, gain wisdom from the past. We're going to stop at just a couple of points of our number line, which is coming up here. Just around 1940, if we can move to the number line, that would be great. Just around 1940, the world was hugely influenced by a parenting style called enforcement parenting or authoritarian style parenting. This was a very strict form of parenting. It actually dictated what the child's diet would be, and this was, I think, in Sweden, and it actually saved thousands of lives. The diet was good, and so this person who had created this was confirmed. But it also established very, very strict boundaries on schedules, including how long a child could be held, which was not long at all. It was very short during the day, and how long a child should just be left on their own, which was most of the day. As you can imagine, there were huge problems within the homes who followed this expert for two reasons. Number one, this man was blending wisdom with his own flawed and unproven theories. And number two, sinful parents chose to use their authority to take advantage of a child's obedience, and for their own convenience, their own pride, and sometimes their own evil intent. And this led to child abuse. God greatly cares about authority being motivated by love, and obedience is his desire for us because it promotes wisdom so that life can be lived well. God is not a fan of those who turned authority into a weapon and obedience into an advantage over a weaker individual. That's called sin, and he will not tolerate it. With all of this, societies began to blame the flawed system rather than the individuals who were using the system for their own offense towards these little victims. So enter in the era of psychology. Atheism is at the foundation of psychology, and we need to realize that. They made the effort right from the very beginning to disprove the existence of God. They believed the behaviors were benign and that right and wrong is relative. It's up to each individual to decide. And so the moral standard was deemed unnecessary, and therefore there was no sin, right? No moral standard, no sin. If there's no sin, then there shouldn't be any guilt, right? They taught that guilt was a humanly taught emotion and should be eradicated from our thoughts, and they tried. They attempted to undo what actually the Creator's gift to mankind. Guilt is our inner mechanism, and it's designed to guide and guard us as we walk through life, to keep us from wandering off the path, to keep us out of danger, and to keep us from entering into sinful choices. We are more than a century into psychology, and it is absolutely booming, and yet they still have not done the impossible. They have not eliminated God. They have not changed the fact that mankind sins, right? We see it all around us. They have not relieved the human species from feeling guilt. And I would say with a room full of moms, you could probably attest to this, right? In 1946, we moved to the next psychologist. Dr. Benjamin Spock introduced his book entitled The Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care. This man sold 50 million copies of his book, and this is before Amazon, right? Think of that. He changed the focus from being parent authority-driven to the child's feelings, and he began to minimize the effort in training to a moral standard. However, eventually Spock's horrific errors in theory came to light. Not only did his change produce the most rebellious generation of all time in the 60s and 70s, but valid studies disproved his 40-year theory about what the right position of a sleeping baby should be, finding it to be the cause of approximately 50,000 deaths due to SIDS. How did those poor parents feel who had placed their blind trust in this expert that had robbed them of their child's life. For the sake of time, we're going to jump ahead on the timeline. And we're going to look at a psychologist by the name of Dr. William Sears, who in the 1990s introduced even a more aggressive child-centered form of parenting. He wrote the book, Attachment Parenting Book. This encouraged babies to be attached to their parents for as many hours of the day as possible. And it encouraged full freedom of expression without boundaries, and it allowed self-will and sin to run wild. The parenting style also brought in the idea of the family bed, clearly making the priority relationship in the home about the parent and child rather than the husband and wife. And the key here, ladies, is God has established the husband and wife relationship to be the primary relationship in the home. Because if a marriage is not healthy, if it is not in good condition, the entire family is in danger. While this parenting style was being widely embraced, hardly anyone acknowledged the fact that his fellow psychologists were actually blowing the whistle and declaring that there was absolutely no empirical research that had supported his claims. And a valid study came out proving this form of intensive motherhood resulted in statistically more depressed moms. I happen to know about Dr. Sears. That was my era, my generation. And I actually know that his wife was one of the ones who was dealing with horrible depression. It's a result of departing from the ways of God. And these kids in this generation, and of course this might be some of you, I'm not saying this is you, I'm just saying the overarching study of this generation, they are known as the me generation. Of course they are, with that focus. They display low achievement in many areas, more impulsive and aggressive behaviors, more prone to substance abuse, unable to manage time and habits. So we're going to jump forward here, and now we are sitting smack dab in our current culture with gentle parenting. And this has been made popular by a psychologist, Sarah Ockwell-Smith, who wrote the book, Gentle Parenting Book. She follows on the same wave as all the other psychologists. She's inferring that there is no maker, the child's choices are never sinful, and guilt is a learned hindrance to a child's mental health. She touts that her style of parenting is without shame, blame, and punishment, and yet parents today experience more shame and more personal blame. And yes, there is punishment within the gentle parenting community, only instead of it being the parent punishing the child, we are now seeing the child punishing the parent. Ladies, abuse from any hand, big or small, is absolute sin and is not to be tolerated. It is always triggered by one's strong desire to practice one's own will. Your child should never be abused, and neither should you. As we discuss these flawed theories that we've all been influenced by in one way or another, it makes me think of a famous quote from Mark Twain. He once said, "It's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." Ladies, we need to be willing, point number 2 on your outline, to trade the unproven methods that I think are just not so for life-giving truths. There are too many areas in gentle parenting that are in conflict with God's wisdom, and that's the problem. In fact, right now I'm going to highlight two of those. That's all I have time for today, but I think they are the ones that are most deeply failing our children today. And they are also so responsible for the discord and the dysfunction that we're seeing in the family. So the first one is on the view of self-regulation. Sarah Ockwell Smith's view says that children are not yet capable of emotional self-regulation, and that it's important to understand their neurological development when disciplining them. When I read this, that opens up to me this very subjective spectrum of when this development is supposed to begin. So it's leaving moms in this fog of, okay, when do we begin and how do we apply it, right? It's not answering those questions. We're wondering, are my kids even developmentally able to understand this? And so you're off track before you've even hit the starting gate. And the truth is, ladies, the developmental process of learning moral skills, because that's what behavior is all about. It means respecting others. It means respecting the answers, yes or no. It means being kind to one another. It means managing anger, practicing self-control. Those are all moral skills. And it all begins, believe it or not, it all begins when the baby is able to crawl. It actually begins prior to that, but we don't notice it until they're able to crawl. The Bible tells us our conscience is equipped with the knowledge of right from wrong from the start of life, right? Conception. Therefore, what has to be developed, or in today's terminology, what has to be regulated is our inner ability to say no to sin and yes to God. Or in the early years, yes to mom and dad, right? To grow in trust that God and the child's parents know what is best for his little life. This is how he learns to rest underneath mom and dad's authority. Once he's characterized by obedience, dad and mom can slowly begin to offer him more and more responsibilities, which will include choices. We don't want to give him choices too soon because it strengthens the will. A little at a time when we give them choices, and then he's able to manage it. When he's able to manage it, then we can begin to give a little more and a little more. It's just a building process. This is a child who's growing in moral maturity, and that should be the goal. This is not about the development of the mind. It is about the development of the conscience. Building up with what God initially gave us and confirming the laws God's written on our hearts. That brings us to a second gentle parenting area that we will touch on. Sarah Ockwell Smith tells us that we are to remove rewards and punishment. She claims that the system of rewards and punishment are highly flawed, naive, and ineffective. She says that because motivation or lack of it is not the cause of 99% of difficult behaviors. Children don't enjoy misbehaving, they don't enjoy making us sad or angry, and they definitely don't enjoy the out-of-control feeling of a tantrum. She states they are already motivated to behave. Motivation is not the problem. First of all, since the system of rewards and punishment is God's good system, let's once again check in on the creator of that circuit board. And the Bible tells us not 99% of behaviors, but 100% of difficult behaviors is due to us wanting our own way. When we want something and we can't have it, it directly affects our attitudes and our actions. And we can all attest to this, right? Think about our interactions with our husbands sometimes, right? James 4:2 says, you desire and you do not have, so you murder. You covet and you cannot obtain, so you fight and you quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and you do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend on your own passions. We see this, right? Habitually, we see this. That is our true motivation for behavior. And her comment, children don't want to misbehave. Well, guys, I have videos of my kids from way back when having the best time of their life because they are misbehaving. And so we cannot say they don't want to misbehave. They're having a ball when they misbehave. And the Bible tells us that sin is pleasurable for a season, right? God knows our hearts. We've all experienced it. Sarah's next point, for the most part, kids don't want their parents sad or angry. Well, I'm going to speak from my own experience on that. I remember my childhood, and I remember how much I loved my parents. I adored them, and I respected them. They were good parents. But if I wanted something and they didn't want me to have it, well, my want for that tipped the scale over their happiness, believe me. I was willing to gamble on their happiness or unhappiness just to get what I wanted. And I am sure all of you feel the same way. So if we make efforts to wait out our child's sinful behaviors the way that we're being encouraged to do in today's parenting, if we wait until they are, this cloudy word, developmentally ready to learn to be self-regulated, we are setting them up to practice habitual sin over and over and over and over and over until the pathways in their brains are so deep that they are now characterized by that behavior. In reality, we have undone their God-given ability to grow in care for others better than themselves, and they are hindered in their ability to say no to the dangers of sin. The Bible tells us that the wages of sin is death. That does not go well for our kids if they are never given the opportunity to strengthen their moral will. So as we look at God's word, we clearly see another irrefutable mechanism that he has created, and it cannot be broken. It is eternal. It is forever. This is every action equals consequence. Every action equals consequence. Positive action equals positive consequence. That sounds like reward to me. Negative action equals negative consequence. That sounds like punishment to me, right? The entire reason our world is in a mess today is due to negative actions equal negative consequences. When we try to undo a system that is God's system, the bad news is the consequences are not taken away. They just get harder, rougher. They tear at relationships, and people are left feeling hopeless, hateful, and in danger. As a quick example, consider the stance the law has taken on shoplifting, although I think this has changed, yes. But our liberal California laws had reduced the probability and the severity of punishment for offenders. So currently, there are places in our state and even in our country where people are afraid to go in and shop, and they can't even find employees to work at these places. So when our judicial system fails, mankind's sin runs rampant, doesn't it? We saw it in action. This causes us to see our desperate need for justice. This is important. We can hope for justice, but who do we trust, right? Do you know whose idea it was to establish justice in the world? It was God's idea. God is the only perfectly trustworthy and faithful judge. And when he created us, he shared his attribute of justice with us. We have that in our hearts. He wrote his laws. Again, he wrote his laws on our hearts. So even when an infant has had their toy removed, right? You take a toy from a child, what do? They scream, they cry, right? Because what you just did to them was unjust, and they know it. That wasn't right. This is why it's God's desire that parents practice wise and loving judgment over your children. It's necessary, just like our nation needs that. We need to be those judges within our own home. Only then can a child grow in trust of your judgments, so that what was written on his heart will be confirmed, and he will grow to respect God's laws. When a psychologist declares that reward and punishment will fail in motivating a child, they're taking on the God of the universe. It's not a good position to be in. And just like what we see in our nation, which has quickly slid into lawlessness, our children will do the same thing. That's why parents are feeling overwhelmed today in their own homes, because the lawlessness in the homes has become overwhelming. What I've seen in over 30 years of ministry and biblical parenting, the parents who were lovingly faithful to trust the wisdom of God's book and parented by faithfully reflecting God's principles in their home, they encouraged the development of godly integrity in their child's heart. Those faithful parents who did not underestimate the capabilities of their children, even their infants, what their little ones were capable of understanding and doing, have been incredibly blessed by children who eventually became teens, the dreaded teens, right? But these parents were able to drop the keys to the car in the hands of their teens and know that they were going to make wise choices. They were characterized by moral wisdom and maturity, and they were a blessing to their parents. And they've gone on to become blessings to their spouses and to their children today. Those individuals who were born in the meism era, whose parents stuck with biblical parenting, are seriously the example of good action equals good consequence. Point number 3 on your outline: trust in one book called the Bible. Through the Bible, we learn God has a plan for our child's life, and it includes, number 1, loving authorities. You are the only one in your child's life that they will ever call mom. That is an honorable position, and it was granted to you by God. And it deserves the utmost respect. This is going to show them not only how to respect you, but eventually may influence them in how they will show respect to God. God's plan also includes, number 2, growing in obedience. When a person learns to obey, it equips them with strength of character to walk successfully in life. It also includes hardships in life. Yes, who wants to hear that? Not Sarah. She doesn't want to hear it, but it is true. Yes, moms, we are going to see hardships and trauma in our child's life. Why do we allow the psychologists to try and convince us that hardships lead to damaged people? An author who has written about gentle parenting, I love this statement. It's brilliant. She says, wouldn't you think that flowers would bloom in powdered sugar? It turns out they grow best in dirt. God has designed our hardships to grow us and to train us and our children. He even encourages us to rejoice in hardships. Really? Rejoice, knowing that as we suffer, we are actually growing in endurance. And the endurance produces character in us. And the character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame. Because we can know that the love of God can be poured into our hearts. That comes right from Romans 5:3 in the Bible. God plans also, number 4, that we would serve others, service, right? And this begins in the home with our little ones. I'll just brag for a moment. I just saw my little 15-month-old Lucy throwing clothes in the laundry. She was doing the laundry with Mama. It was brilliant, and she was so proud of herself, right? So we need to be family members who serve family members, right? Everybody. We're a unit. It's not parents serving kids. We're all working together to serve one another. When we teach our children to make their tasks a gift that they give to each other as they're serving, especially if they have a song on their lips, right? And in their heart, it will bring gladness to their heart. Serving gives kids the very deep satisfaction of knowing that they don't always have to be the problem in the family. They can be the solution. God's plan also includes contentment, no matter the circumstances. Don't doubt that your little ones can be content. They can. Contentment comes from security, which comes from their parents. They can trust and they can rest under their parents' good authority. It comes when they know that God is capable of strengthening them through any anxious moment. That goes for us too, girls. And that they will grow stronger as the minutes pass by. And that equips them to do better in the next event of anxiety, right? And finally, God's plan includes peace. The Bible tells us the Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Moms, isn't it time that we all curb the chaos and cut the self-guilt and let God show us the joys of family life by his book? And I want to let you know that Mario and I would be happy to help you through our class. Do not let the cost of our class stop you. We work with every budget. So just let us know, all right? Have a great time in your discussion. God bless you all.